Folks, please take your seats. We are going to start the next session. And I want to talk about that ever-present tension between things like commerce and creativity. Please, thank you. The question, does technology bring us together to share our culture and heritage, or does it bleach it of its individuality? Can true culture ever be global? Or does being global mean also being generic? We spoke a little about this in the world of literature again this week, but I want to ask that question, is there ever a balance between commercial success and creative integrity? So to discuss that, please welcome my panel, Dr. Jyotsna Srikanth, who's a violinist and artistic director at Dhruv Arts, Rajat Dhawan, Chief Technology Officer at Soho House, Arunima Kumar, who's the director of Arunima Kumar Dance Company, and Jason Hafford, who's a co-founder and manager at Dream Bay Entertainment. Welcome to you all. Hello. Lovely to see you all, thank you. And I promise everyone we will get to lunch, but I really want to hear our panel, and it's glorious outside. So we've got about 20 minutes until lunch. But thank you all for being here, and lovely to see you. And maybe I can start with you, Rajat, because people will know Soho House sells a certain brand, doesn't it? A vibe, it's a lifestyle, it's a culture that people want to be part of. But explain to me, first of all, that dilemma between commercial success and a creative community. Can the two coexist?
Yeah, I think they definitely can, and it does definitely in the world of Soho House. For those of you who don't know Soho House, we are essentially a global lifestyle business, which essentially operates on a membership model. People apply to be a member, and once they are, they can enjoy, our facilities, which are typically private members clubs. Several in London, but also in India, and expanding. And by design, we are a membership club for the people who are creative, either in creative industries such as journalism, media, fashion, art, music, or people who are generally creative. They don't have to be in that industry. And we protected that integrity since we were born 30 years ago. So I think protecting that and having that by design itself means that the company is doing something special for people who are creative. But at the same time, we are a for-profit company. We are NYSE listed, more than $1 billion of revenue. And therefore, what we do on a continual basis is striving a balance between how can we continue to promote creativity, having that freedom of expression, but at the same time not stifling that from a commercial perspective. I'll give an example of how we're using artificial intelligence to essentially match members to other members. So typically in a Soho House, one member would meet another, they'd strike a conversation, and sometimes that leads to relationships, more creative endeavors, or even startups. And that's happened since the last 30 years. As we've grown in scale and we've become a lot more international than just being in London, what that has meant is that accidental conversations have reduced. So we've now introduced artificial intelligence-based matching between members based on their behaviors and preferences so that they can meet on our app and then continue the conversation after that. So this is one example of many where creativity continues to be fostered without compromising the commercial success of the business.
But as you grow, is there a danger you lose this sort of founding principle of what the club was all about, which was a space for members to go? It was private, it was away from the masses. As you grow, in so many countries on such scale, do you lose the core of what being a member of a private club is when it becomes so public?
Yeah. And we get asked this question a lot of times as we scale. But remember that the world's really big, and there are a lot of creatives around the world. I mean, up till now we only have one club in India, which is in Juhu in Mumbai. And imagine how big the country is in terms of creative people, and therefore we are expanding. We didn't have any presence in Latin America. We've just opened two. We had no presence in Scandinavia, opened two. We have very limited presence in Southeast Asia. We have no presence in Australia, no presence in Africa. So there is still a lot of white space out there, such that we can continue with the ethos of being exclusive for the creative community and still not dilute our proposition.
Yeah. Arunima, let me bring you in here because, I asked that question about can you grow in scale? Can you take what you do to a global audience while still protecting the core of what you are? And talk to me about what you do and how you manage to translate that. Technology allows you to take your art to a whole other audience. But how do you protect the very essence of what you're doing?
I think so. I run an Indian classical dance institution, and it is the largest institution of Kuchipudi in the UK. So just to give you an example, I left my banking career, a very successful banking career, to focus on arts. And I wanted to create a living bridge between past and present, between what I learned in India and as a modern, as a girl growing up in contemporary society, what I could do. So we spoke about retelling of stories and how do we push that boundary forward. The process of making has to be authentic. So when I create, I look at what affects me, what is my knowledge of my classical form, and how can I let it breathe? How can I make it accessible to the children learning today, to my audiences today, and how can I really scale it up? So to give you an example, we created Avatara. So Dashavatara is part of Indian mythology. Everybody knows about the concept of 10 reincarnations of Lord Vishnu. So in my, when I started working on it, I wanted the 10th Avatara, the last one, to be a specially abled person. And we worked with Latin and ballroom dancers, with Kuchipudi dancers, and brought them together in a collaboration to create this project, Avatara. And so therefore the process of making is still authentic. The process of creating and leveraging the art, which is Kuchipudi, is still authentic, but it is set in a realistic setting. It is set in a setting that, I want to have a conversation with my audiences, and do you think that this Avatara can work? Yeah. Second is when I used, there is a foot painting tradition in Kuchipudi. Normally we paint gods and goddesses while dancing, but I used that to create a production called Stree. And in that I said, well, a woman can be who she wants to be and not stereotyped, from mythology. And we gave examples of Rati, Sita, Sati. And so I paint a woman, a modern woman, rather than a god or a goddess. So it is about really bridging that gap. It is about staying authentic. I don't demonize being commercial, because I think to stay sustainable, you have to remain. You have to be commercial. The process of creating has to be creative, but I'm hungry as an artist. I'm greedy as an artist for creating, but not for money. Money is just a means, but I don't demonize it. And I think the process of selling or the process of showcasing your art has to be commercial if you want to, remain viable. So we, in our company, have an artist development process, and that really engages with children. And a lot of it, a lot of the revenue comes from that, but we also support bursary programs. So really having that balance of community as well as a private partnership, and that's what makes it sustainable. And last point on technology, again, I want to befriend technology. I want to embrace it. I think that with COVID, we had a tsunami of technology thrown at us. And Indian dance was not really thought of as something you could teach on Zoom. But, I had almost 150 people join at one time from across the globe, in one single session. So the scale for technology is incredible. And if we could follow the Duolingo or like the new yoga app, for dance, and make, say, Indian dance fashionable, I think Indian dance is waiting to happen, just like yoga. It's just all of us believing in it, and then really keeping the living bridge alive.
And Jason, I want to bring you in on that point in just a second, but I'm interested in Jyotsna, because there are a lot of parallels here, aren't there, in what you do as well, about bridging those divides. But equally, the reality is that people need to be commercially successful to make that happen. You can have the best ideas in the world, but unless they're commercially viable, they don't travel. How do you navigate that? How do you make sure that what you do is also commercially successful?
Yeah, here I will have to answer in two parts. One, me as a violinist, as an artist, and one as a curator of London International Arts Festival. As an artist, yes, in the Indian diaspora setup, Bollywood is so popular. So anything that revolves around Bollywood, I can sell out. That's but when I'm speaking about the hard, brutal truth. But when you come up with something very, very creative and quality-wise it's excellent, it is difficult to push. So what I do as a curator, I partner with organizations which are well known, which have a good profile, and by the name of the organization, audiences come in.
Right.
So I'm not going to struggle very hard with the getting in audiences.
Yeah.
So at the same time, okay, I also need to see some commercial sense in what I do as a curator. So I do program events which are commercially successful also. So this balances.
Yeah.
So as an artist, like example, I have been doing a lot of collaboration. I come from the South Indian Carnatic music tradition. It's a traditional music from south of India. So being in the UK, yes, there is a niche audience for classical art, definitely. But collaborations is the order of the day.
Right.
So I did compose for the London Philharmonic Orchestra a project called Raga Seasons, where India's 6 seasons are represented by 6 movements and 6 ragas. Now I'm writing Emotions 9, which are the 9 emotions. So this is for a totally different setup, a string orchestra and a philharmonic. That also promotes cultural diplomacy, if you see. So that really balanced between creativity and commercial aspects.
Yeah.
And also one of my collaborations called Nordic Raga, a collaboration with the Swedish folk music. Same thing. This happened in Nordic countries. So we were able to somehow balance between creativity and commerce by performing at well-known venues. And then of course, now social media is there with promos, shorts, or using technology. We were able to do a very good marketing of compared to the first tour, second tour, our shows was sold out.
Yeah, yeah.
So
and it's really interesting, the idea that if it's connected to Bollywood, it's fine, it's solved.
Yes.
Jason, let me bring you in here because, I mean, you spent, a decade bringing India and Hollywood together, didn't you? I wonder in that time how that relationship changed as well, the understanding of the stories and the narratives and the market as a whole in terms of what Hollywood would do and what Bollywood want to do and where they meet in the middle.
I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for them to meet more in the middle. I think they still tend to be pretty separate. But I think when you look at the technology piece that's changed in the last decade, the fun thing has been there has been some more cross-border collaboration and inspiration with people being able to watch things from different places in a much easier capacity. You can, when RRR hit Netflix, everyone in America lost it. They never went and saw Bahubali in a theater. And so that Netflix, that technology, that Amazon Prime can really supercharge the ability for something to get traction and get an
just
audience.
Availability though. If it's there, people will watch it. They don't have to hunt it out.
You look at 100+ years of cinema in India and say this is an incredible industry. There's people all over the world who are obsessed, whether or not they're Indian, you could be Arab or African or Eastern European and love Indian cinema. But you had to have that distribution platform in your hometown, which was normally a theater. So with Netflix and with Apple and with Amazon, you now have the ability to just turn on your phone and watch Rajamouli or watch Nawaz in Sacred Games, which was a big entry point for people saying this was probably the first thing they watched. If they weren't Indian, Sacred Games might have been the first thing they watched.
Level.
Yeah, and then that kick-started well, now I need to watch all of his movies.
Yeah.
Now I need to see who is Vikram Motwani? What's the next thing he's going to do? Who is this Anurag Kashyap guy who seems to be at Cannes every year? Like it creates this great entry point.
And with that access point, is there any pressure to sort of water down the Indianness of these stories for a global audience? Or with that track record, can you say, look, these are great stories, they will travel universally, and here they are on the platform?
I think if you look at like RRR, for example, there was no watering down of the Indian bits. So I would say no. It actually creates a really interesting thing when you start saying post 2016, 2017, when the streamers really took off. A filmmaker like Anurag who wants to make really important cinema, sometimes there's a difficulty in selling that to the distributors and the theater owners across India. If you can say, I want to give my pure idea and I don't want the distribution guy in wherever to disrupt my beautiful genius idea. If I just take it to Netflix or I take it to Amazon or I take it to this international platform, I don't have to worry about the ticket counts. And so it allows you to actually be more honest and more faithful as a director or writer.
Yeah, and Rajat, the reason I ask about the kind of watering down, because, you know, as you open houses in more cities around the world, clearly you want to have a connection with that city. There's a reason you're in Mumbai or in London or Miami or New York. How do you respect the kind of the culture and the local kind of flavor of where you are versus essentially being a chain? And I don't use that in a derogatory way, but you know, you are delivering a product, and that's why people want to be members, because they want to be part of that chain, that community.
Yeah. And it's an important balance that we have to strike in every city that we go. And you know, there needs to be a local nuance to everything that we do, including the art on the wall or, you know, the food on the menu. But at the same time, there has to be a global influence of what Soho House stands for. And, you know, every city is a bit different. When we went to Mumbai, we had mac and cheese on the menu, and that was a flop. So we had to reintroduce butter chicken on the menu so that, you know, it got more popular. And you know, every city is therefore different in different ways. And you got to, it's hard to define the balance, but you got to strike the balance as you progress. And again, you know,
and how do you learn that balance? Is it just looking at things like sales and sign-ups, or is this about?
Yeah, there is a lot of insights meet intuition in our business. So obviously there are people who are local, there are people who are global, contributing to how the club progresses. But often there are lots of ideas. But what we look at is member preferences and behaviors, and how do we use that advanced analytics against how we invest our money and progress the club in such a way that is truly, you know, believed by our members.
And Arunima, when we talk about sort of that creativity that, you know, we all share in different ways, and you talk there about that bridge to overcome divides, to sort of, you know, foster greater understanding. At what point do you make that decision that this needs to be commercially viable? This needs to sell, else I can't put it on. You can have the best, most creative idea in the world, and that's a really difficult decision for everybody here. But how do you square that in your mind?
I think when I create, I just create, and I'm having a conversation. I'm liberated. I'm free. But you're right. When it comes to funders, and I present my ideas, and it's not getting through, and my grant applications are not viable, then I look at some of their tick boxes. I say, okay, well, I worked in community when it was not fashionable. I worked in inclusive intergenerational arts for the last decade when nobody really cared for it. But today, that is something which will get me money. So I want to do it, and therefore I will do it, and therefore I will probably create a blend of, you know, having a lot of that in my work. So we do a lot of dance for social impact and community impact. I will include that. At some point I will get the funding for it, and it will also allow me to be sustainable in my creative, you know, works. So
yeah, and Jason, when you're having those conversations then with artists that you're working with, is there a greater understanding now of having the idea but making it travel, making it globally, you know, attractive, and the understanding of how they do that successfully?
Yeah, I think when people try to make the idea that travels, it normally flops. I think where you find that the nuance and the specificity of and authenticity of the place and the story is where it really over-indexes and travels. If you make Squid Game and you try to make it too global, it doesn't work. If you say this is for Korea, and if you like it, great.
But no one knew Squid Game would
Right.
take off, right? So is it about the gamble?
Yeah. So it's the risk in saying I'm going to tell the story. Or Parasite, another example of it was very Korean, but you could reset that story in London, in Los Angeles, in Bombay, anywhere.
But the Korean bit made it unique.
The Korean bit and being true to that makes it work in all those places.
And a final, our time is up as always. Jyotsna, give me a sense then of, you know, how independent artists can survive, because you work with so many of them in this world, in this globalized world. We know it's easier than ever for them to get their story, their craft, their art out, but it also means that the competition is global too.
Yes, I would like to answer with the perspective of a musician, because
sure,
I'm a
of course.
musician.
Yes.
So independent artists, yes, they can survive, but there must be adaptability and versatility also. I can't say I'm very rigid and strict. I'm only going to do this. No, collaboration. you must have collaborative spirit. Also, you can't just look at performances. You should up your game and see how you can survive with music production, then teaching. Then you can offer your music for television, film, and commercials. You should see how you can get revenue from different streams.
Yes.
And of course, the independent artists should up their PR game, and social media. They need to be in touch with the industry professionals, attend workshops, seminars, all these. And then they must also be in having some knowledge about copyright laws, which is very important. That's where they're failing. And because with my experience as an independent artist, I had problems with the copyright laws and many people just taking my music and things like that. You can miss a lot of revenue from that. And you can get revenue from streaming, on online classes, all these are there. And then education, there must be continuous learning. And now music technology has progressed so much. You must learn to balance your traditional art with technology. And of course, you must collaborate with different genres of music, different cultures, different traditions. Then that can take you to many places. And also mainly independent artists also need support of government and corporate funders. Yeah. That is not happening now. And the Arts Council funding, a small chunk of independent artists are getting, and you have to tick so many boxes to get the funding. So corporate funders, if they can start helping independent artists, they can survive.